relate to that chaos chasing because it makes you feel so much dopamine at the time.
And maybe she does want it. Maybe she is thriving off that, and that's something that she needs to unpack.
And maybe like me, they didn't have as much awareness of the fact that that's what they were doing.
I do think you talk to her before you just abort mission. I think you can say, you're the problem.
It's not me, it's you.
You actually can say that.
I've got a friend who seems to chase chaos in relationships. She is clearly the reason her last wonderful relationship didn't work out, and since then she has dated multiple toxic guys back to back. She says she loves the red flags. As if it's funny until it's not so much funny anymore. She also never takes accountability for her bad behaviour. I wish I didn't get invested and didn't care what she did with relationships, but it's put me off of our friendship. She's never done anything bad to me, but I find myself with the ick and not really wanting to hang out with her because I can't possibly listen to one more of these chaotic and red flag guy stories. Am I being a bad friend?
We've never had an ick in a friendship before. Come into Life Uncut. I've actually don't think I've ever had an ick in a friendship. Have you?
Yeah.
I've had friendships deteriorate, but for different reasons. Not because, like the ick for me, I relate to a relationship where you're like, don't kiss me, don't touch me. The thought of your tongue in my mouth or in any crevice is disgusting. But for a friendship, I've never had that revulsion before, you know?
Yeah, for me, I don't think it's revulsion. I think it's actually you get to the limit of your exhaustion. And I've been in a similar situation to this before. The reason that I got to that point was because these chaotic stories, they can be very fun, but they can become almost like you feel as though in the relationship, the person is coming to you and they're telling you the stories and they're so large and full of emotion and like it's so hectic that you're like, whoa, like that's a lot. And when that happens time after time after time, you can be put in this position where you're like, I'm not your therapist. Like, I'm not your therapist and I'm not here to kind of unpack the ins and outs of this over and over and over and over. And it kind of depends on whether they're telling you these stories because they think they're funny or because they want your advice and they kind of want to vent to you. Because I do think that there's a limit to how much you can kind of tolerate just as a bystander in the situation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what it is for me is it's really frustrating when you hear a friend that might always be the victim in something when you know they're not actually the victim. That's what this screams to me. Like she's like, you know, it never works out. It's me. I'm the common denominator. But you have given them the same advice over and over again, and you've watched them do the same thing over and over again. That's when it's frustrating. That's when it's like, I don't know what to fucking tell you anymore. Like you want this. That's when it gets really hard. And maybe she does want it. Maybe she is thriving off that, and that's something that she needs to unpack. Maybe she's actually commitment avoidant. And a lot of people, we've spoken about this so many times, but a lot of people feel like they need that in a relationship to feel alive or to feel like that the relationship's worth fighting for. You know, it's just love, this chaos and this roller coaster is because we have so much chemistry and we love each other so much. And like, it's bullshit. We all know that that's bullshit. We've unpacked that enough to know that.
Interestingly, and I really want to sit in this point for a bit, and I'm speaking before anyone kind of comes to me and is like, how dare you say this? I'm speaking from the perspective of someone who has experienced this and has a variety of psychiatric conditions. I found...
You're not letting people into your crazy, Keisha.
Well, literally though, it's been really interesting for me since being diagnosed and medicated for ADHD, looking back on some of my past relationship and dating experiences, I had absolutely no awareness how much I chased a dopamine hit in relationships. It made me so impulsive. It made me do things just to fucking feel something, but I didn't know at the time that that's what it was. I thought that that's just how I was, and I experienced the highs in relationships, and what came with that was the very, very down lows. So I think it can be a very different conversation when you're talking about someone who is not neurochemically balanced. You know, that's the current theories. I've experienced friends do this as well, and I relate to that chaos chasing because it makes you feel so much dopamine at the time. And it sounds a little bit like maybe your friend is someone who does experience a similar thing. And maybe like me, they didn't have as much awareness of the fact that that's what they were doing. And that's why she's chasing these same guys over and over and over again. But you're in the position where you're like, this is exhausting and I don't want to hear about this anymore. And I don't think you're a bad person for doing that. I wouldn't have felt as though someone was a bad person for feeling that way about my stories. even though at the time I would have been like, oh, that's pretty offensive and hurtful to me. Now looking back on it, I'm like, oh, I completely understand why they would have been put in that position.
Yeah, it's one thing if it's one thing if you are really trying in your dating life, or even if it's not even dating, like even if you're just doing hookups or whatever it is, if you are really trying and you are just unlucky and keep meeting dickheads that are treating you badly and it is chaos, then that's different. But when your friend is constantly like coming to you laughing, telling you the same shit, you've given them the same advice, this has been going on for years, then I think you are completely in your right, and it does not make you a bad friend to step away a little bit, because at the end of the day, you can only do so much and be so much, and you are not going to be a good friend if you are sitting there looking at your friend, listening to her talk to you, being like, I could think of nothing fucking worse than sitting here right now. Like if your internal monologue is like, I want to be somewhere else, then you probably should be somewhere else. But I don't think that makes you a bad friend at all. I think it's really important to note too that friendships, and I've gone through this with so many friends over the years and decades, friendships come and go. Sometimes they are situational. You know, sometimes they are for a period. What's that super cringy?
Reason, season, or a lifetime.
Yeah, that super cringy quote that Laura would have posted 100 times in her life. In every relationship. Yeah, friends are like a season for a reason or a lifetime, whatever. You know, and I've had all of them. And I think everyone has had all of them. And I think everyone listening to this right now knows exactly or has had a friend in this situation before. I do think you talk to her before you just abort mission. I think you can say, you're the problem.
It's not me, it's you.
You actually can say that. Like if she knows it too and she's talking about it, you have to just say like, this is going to keep happening to you. As long as you're aware, this will keep happening over and over if you keep doing the same behavior over and over. And then it doesn't have to be a big friend breakup, but you can easily just pull back and not be as available. Like, that's fine. You're like, hey, we're adults now. Everyone has busy lives. He can say, hey, not available this week anymore, maybe catch you. So maybe your catch-up's a bit more sporadic. But at the end of the day, fuck no, it doesn't make you a bad friend.
I think the only caveat that I want you to be a little bit aware of is whether you're projecting your own desires for relationship standards onto the other person. So, and what I mean by that is, does this person want a long-term relationship, but they're acting super chaotic, they're accepting really toxic behavior, they're also doing really toxic behavior, and they're wanting this fairy tale outcome? That's incongruent. But if they want to just be having fun and dating and like they don't want anything serious and they don't want anything long-term, then you kind of expecting that that's what they want for their own life and judging that choice and their behaviors towards it probably isn't the right thing either.
Yeah, but she does say she loves, like the girl says she loves red flags.
Yeah.
Like she's in her red flag era. Go queen. We've all had our red flag era, but you might
we weren't aware that that's what it was.
But it's hard. It's hard when you're in your red flag era and everyone around you is in the green flag era.
Yeah.
Like when you've come through the cyclone of the red flag era and you're out the other end, it's hard to be in different places. So let her do a thing. If that's what she's frothing, then like that's on her. As long as she's happy in it. But it seems weird to be happy in the red flag era.
Some people get highs from it. Like sometimes you get the thrill from it. And I think that you kind of hit the nail on the head. It depends on whether she is making herself the victim in these situations and whether she's making out that all this behavior is happening to her.
And she's so unlucky in love.
And she's not really taking any accountability. To me, it screams of the type of person who's like, I just didn't feel the spark for anyone who is not super toxic.
Yeah.
So it really does depend on a couple of things. But I don't think you're a bad friend for feeling this way. It just sounds as though your values are different at the moment. So take a little bit of a step back. Don't cut the friendship off completely, you know. But yeah, like you said.
Sporadic.
Yeah.
Sporadic catch up.
Yeah.
At a movie where you can't talk. Jokes.